Welcome to the Laser Lounge podcast, where creativity meets craftsmanship and the maker community comes to life. I'm your host, Alicia Pate. I'm a full-time laser maker, ranch-based entrepreneur, and your guide through the world of CO2, Galvo, CNC, and everything in between. This show is all about real conversation, practical tips, and the stories behind the grind. Whether you're running a side hustle, building a full-blown business, or just love the maker life. Shout out to our incredible show sponsors who help make this podcast possible. GS2 Awards and Trotec for unmatched quality in engraving and award supplies and awesome machines. Hotian Laser, pushing the Galvo innovation forward. And Phantom CNC, where precision meets power. Now let's jump into today's show. All right, welcome back to the podcast, the Laser Lounge podcast. I got James in here with me today, and we're going to talk about something that we've been talking a little bit about in the group, and that's basically doing a business plan for your company, right, or your maker business. And so it'll be a short one today, but we're going to go over a template that we've put together, and it's available online, and we'll share the link in the post. But we're going to step through each of these sections and tell you what you kind of want to think about when you're making these business plans. The main thing that we want you to kind of take away from this is that you don't have to pay somebody $300 or take a big course or have somebody come in and hire them as a consultant to walk you through this. This stuff is free material. There's a lot of resources out there. We're just kind of bringing you a slice of it.
Wait, you don't have to have an MBA to do this?
No, you don't. Oh, okay. You don't have to pay a business coach or anything like that. So this is very basic stuff that we're going to go over. Some of you already have these, some of you don't. And so we're going to walk through it. So we're going to go through, there's like 14 sections, or maybe there's 10 in here. We're going to summarize each section and have a little overlay color in each one from our own perspective. So James, why don't we talk a little bit about the executive summary and what's important in a business plan?
Sure. This is really your elevator pitch. It's like if you were stuck in an elevator, we always say this in the corporate world. If you were in the elevator with a vice president or a director or whatever, and he said, what are you doing? What are your key projects? Then you should be able to answer this in like 2 minutes. What's your business? Why does it matter? What do you sell? What do you do?
Yeah. And it's a great point. And when you're thinking about the executive summary that's in this document, it may be like, well, I know where I'm located and where I'm from, but you might have to hand this document over to a loan officer. Or for me, I've had to use this document in when I was trying to get licensing agreements with universities. So
LLC.
Yeah, you need to think this document is representing your company, and it may be used for things later, right? And so that's why you need to document the whole thing. So you're right about the executive summary. It's your, quick overview that you should be able to easily explain to somebody in less than a minute or two. If you're in a coffee house and they say, "Ooh, what do you do?" And this is your time to you highlight your executive summary. And it's a quick comment on what you do, where you're located.
Yeah, it's your mission statement, your key products. Those things are all listed out in the template, as you said, too. So you'll see that when you click on it.
The next section is around your business description. And so it's a little bit deeper than your executive summary. What is your structure from a accounting type side, right? Is it LLC, sole proprietorship? Are you just kind of winging it? And then you're paying taxes, but it makes you start thinking about how you're structured, what the background of your business and the owners that are encompassing of it, right? Your goals, what you're wanting to do short and long term, discussing your original story of kind of why you started. So it makes you think about that.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, people want to know. They want to know your story. I think the origin story, that's something people don't think about, but it's like, why did you start this? They want to relate to you, and they like to buy products from people they can relate to and trust and like.
People love stories. And now that, we're in a time where people are trying to support, small business, USA businesses.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that story. And this is a place for you to document it. What about in the third section, James?
Market analysis. You really need to know who your customer is. This is where you're going to define this. And even we've struggled with this, where we'll try to figure out who our customer is. Sometimes we'll get requests or RFQs from customers that we know we don't have business going after because they really should be going to like a 4Print. It's a complete commodity. And so now we have questions we can ask them to figure out what their values are. But this is, we don't waste the time with them. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And, for us, our target market is the Western theme area, kind of ranch. And this makes us think about that. And so,
and a little nicer things like, natural woods, hardwoods,
fine leathers,
nicer leathers. And I wouldn't say it's, completely high end, but it's higher end. We're not going to compete with 4Print because they're going to be able to crank out 1,000 widgets
unless that is your model, right?
Right. I'm saying we're not, that needs to be captured in our business plan. If you're going to compete with 4Print, then you need to go look at how they operate and figure out how you're going to beat them at that game.
Yeah. And if you're filling this out for the first time and you're like, I don't really know who my target market is, maybe that's a gap.
Yeah.
And so you need to kind of, take a highlighter and write, I got to figure out who my target market is and at least document it, what that size is and what the trends are. And then 2 other areas that are important in here is your competitor analysis. I can't tell you how many people are like, well, I have a laser and I make products and I can't sell anything and no one's buying it. Well, what are you making it for? Who, and who are your competitors? Like we know right now who our competitors are.
Yeah. And another point here, just to add to your thoughts, are you direct to customer? Are you B2B? Are you wholesale? That would be an important distinction here. And it's very easy to lose sight of that or get a request. And then you go down that rabbit hole. And then, frankly, you waste your time, your money, you have opportunity costs because like us, it's just the 2 of us plus some part-time help. So if we waste a day on on making samples and a marketing campaign or catalog for a customer, we don't get it. Well, that's a day we can't get back.
Yeah. And, we're even talking about doing some marketing campaigns in a Western magazine, right? And so that's the kind of stuff you're looking for here. Where is your target market and what does that look like? And, if you skip this section and you're just broad kind of shooting to everything, it can lead to burnout and you're making stuff that really, it's not landing anywhere because it's so broad. So this section makes you start thinking about that. The next section, which is 4, is on products and services. And this is where it gets more specific. What are you selling? How are you pricing it? And what makes it better or different than the next person who's selling the same thing? And this is where you can start thinking about the upsells, bundles, or B2B options. And so if we look at it in detail, it's the detailed description of your product lines, right? What is your strategy for pricing? What unique value proposition do you offer over the next person selling the same round sign? Anything to add here?
Yeah, I think the affinities fit into that. If you're selling shoes and you're going to sell socks because someone who buys shoes needs socks, or if you're selling notebook, then you're going to sell replacement binders for it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and if we look at our own products, we've got I like making stuff for guys. I think there's a gap there, and so you can look and see there's a lot of barware and things like guys would be putting together, right? If you're a wife and it's Father's Day, there's a collection of things that are, to your point, affinities. They kind of go together that you could add one more thing to cart. And so this is
like the decanter.
Yeah.
Decanter, glasses, and coasters. Those go together.
So this is an area that's going to make you start thinking about that and then writing it down and just kind of stepping back and looking at it as a holistic thing. The next section, Section 5, talks about marketing and sales strategy. I think this is a really important section that a lot of people overlook. They get the laser or the UV printer and they're like, I'm going to start making stuff. Well, guess what? If no one sees it, they're not going to buy it. And
you might want to test too, right? Before you scale up or spend a bunch of time. We've had a lot of things that we thought were going to sell really well and they didn't. And we had other ones that we weren't sure and we just tested them. So we have ways to test them with our customers now. We give them out as free samples. But, this is, again, like you said, how are people going to find you? SEO, search engine optimization, is really important. And we actually hired someone for that. And we've seen an uptick. I don't know. I think we only spent like $300 or $400 just to do an initial trial. And now we can see that it came from Google searches. And then we can search ourselves and see that we're coming up, number 1 or number 2, or on the first page, at least on the landing page.
Yeah. And, to be specific in here, the template will show you that you really want to start talking about what kind of branding and messaging you're going to be doing across the platforms. You're probably going to be hitting multiple platforms, sales channels, Etsy, Shopify, B2B, or doing some markets. You probably want to add Instagram on there. We've started focusing more on the Instagram, less on content creation and more emphasis on my own business because I see where the trend is going with that. LinkedIn's another spot. So you need to be documenting that. What is your social media strategy and content strategy? A lot of us makers, we love making, but we hate taking videos and posting. Whereas some people are great at posting, but they don't make product. So it makes you stop and think about it, right? And so are you going to advertise? We started paying for advertisement and we saw some good returns on it.
Yeah, it's hard because we don't do affiliate programs. We're not influencers. We actually have a manufacturing shop and that's what we want to focus on. But if we don't do the marketing and the communication, the people don't know who they are, they won't go to our page and order our products. So they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah. So generally, maybe you want to think about, do you want to advertise? I know that's a topic that people have talked about in the group. Some people say, I tried it, it was a waste of money. And other people live and die by it and they just love it. And it's made a huge change. I would say my impressions in the last quarter of advertising has been positive. So this is what that section is for. And then also you might want to document what kind of customer retention and follow-up do you do. We're okay at it. We probably need to be doing some email flyers and some other things.
We should, yeah.
And so there's opportunity for us too as well. And this template makes you document it and it holds you accountable as something that you're going to do with your business.
Why don't you highlight real quickly Etsy, what we did on the Etsy marketing?
Yeah, so we started playing around with Etsy marketing. I think I started with $5 a day. I went up as high as like $100 a day one time during Christmas. And we're getting a ton of clicks and purchases from it. Now, obviously, Etsy takes a percentage, but we need brand awareness. We needed to get people to our products and then over to our Shopify page with a business card in it. And so we've made a hard push to do that. It's cost us some money, but I think it's been worth it more than not. Now, your products better be spot on, and your branding and your messaging needs to look good. So, be ready before you start advertising and make sure you're ready for it. Let's talk about the next section, James.
Yeah, it's one of our favorite ones because we both have a background in this. Your operations plan. That's section number 6, your operations plan. So that's where you put together your workflows. That includes details like your workspace, how you're going to flow your products, how you're going to finish them. And do you have different stations? We've talked about this before, but the most efficient is just a straight line. The next one's an L. We have our shop laid out where we have the woodworking on one side and then we have the finishing on the inside, but inside our shop, I think you've done a tour, but it's kind of like it is kind of a straight line, right? And then the last station's packaging, it goes out. But this also includes the things like your machines, the materials, the quantities you're going to keep on hand, how you're going to process an order, how you're going to remove bottlenecks. And this helps us out a lot when we go to make another, purchase of another machine, because we're actually studying our flow and we're saying, how do we get more throughput if we buy this machine? Is it going to remove a bottleneck? How quickly will it pay itself off?
Yeah. Yeah. And, another important thing to think about here is your operations. If you have suppliers that are feeding you, how do you interact with them? I know we're probably going to have to set up a form just for some of our suppliers to use to operate a little bit more effectively.
Oh, to track. Yes.
Well, just to operate ordering from them. Right.
Yep.
So this makes you think about that and what those processes look like. Systems will either make or break your business. And if you're new and you're wanting to get into this and you're like, I want to, be successful, you need to be thinking about what that looks like. And so your order fulfillment process is critical.
That's a good point. We have a CNC. We're sponsored by Phantom, but we have a CNC from them, and we do make some of our own products. And then sometimes if we're going to go volume, then we'll R&D them here. We'll fine tune the file, and then we'll send it off to someone else to get the blank in, and then we'll finish it here. We'll make the product. That's a pretty popular approach. It allows us to increase our throughput, but that needs to be in our operations plan, and we have to calculate the value, which leads us to our next one, which is the financial plan.
Absolutely. Financial plan is a very important one. Most makers don't run out of creativity, but a lot of them can run out of cash if they're not planning it well. Yep. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that are like, they're mixing their money, their business money with their personal money. They bought too much. They spent too much on the tool, and then they can't even afford to buy the blanks to make stuff. So this is a real important one. Your startup cost and your funding sources, like how are you going to pay for all this, right? So
your financing, this is really important. And I guess we could be criticized on the other end of it, but we tend to pay cash for everything we do. That's just, we bootstrapped everything. We just dumped every dime back into the business. We started off, we both had day jobs. You quit your corporate job, you run this full time. I support you kind of part-time. I still have a corporate job. So we did finance a couple pieces of equipment. We factored that into our financial plan. And people could say, well, you could have grown more if you had bought a bigger site or more equipment. But that's fine. It goes back to what your goals are, right?
Well, and how comfortable you are. We're
pretty conservative.
Yeah, and that's how we run our normal life. But your financial planning area is very important, right? You want to know what your shop rate is. Our shop rate was pretty low when we started, and now it's a lot higher. And as we talk to some other more experienced owners, they say it's too low, so we probably should raise it. But that's going to help you when you document your shop rate in this plan. That's going to help you with some answers and decisions later as you move along, right?
Yeah, you can, as a side note, you can screen out some of your customers because you don't want to waste their time. And frankly, you don't want to waste your time, right? And if you get asked to bid something and let's say you're like, we're not into the commodity space and it's a commodity. They want 1,000 widgets and they're concerned about saving 10 cents or $1 or whatever. You should probably not bid that, or at least for us, we've gotten to the point where we said, hey, you're probably going to be happier with 4Print.
Yeah.
And we send them over there, or we send them to somebody who has a small shop, doesn't have the overhead. And that's okay.
Yeah. So your financial planning section is really good to deep dive into the analytics of how much you plan to spend a year and where you see things going as far as your forecast for your expenses. So the next area is your team and roles. And even if you're a solo shop, I'm kind of half solo here. It's, I'm mainly doing the day-to-day and James helps because he has a full-time job, but this lays out what you do versus what you could outsource, as we were talking about before with the R&D stuff.
Well, we have some contract, right? For our bookkeeping, our CPA. We do send some products outside to have, custom blanks made after we R&D them here. So you should define that. And it's going to be really hard for you. You're going to have some roles. I mean, you're probably not going to be your CPA, or you're going to need to get your blanks from somewhere. You're probably not going to make 100%. You're probably not going to go cut down your own trees and process your own cutting boards, for example.
Right. So this allows you to start thinking about that from the front of the office and the back of the office. And if you document kind of what me, Alicia, as the owner, is going to do, you can start making a list, and then the things that aren't on there, someone else is going to have to do them. Someone else is going to have to do your, bookkeeping or, whatever it may be. And so if you have employees, that's a good area to start documenting that as well. So the next area is risk assessment. And this one is real important. I'm going to let James take that one.
Yeah, this is where you answer the question, what might go wrong? What could go wrong? This is why you have insurance in case, God forbid, you have a fire. We go through and do a risk assessment. We have fire blankets by our machines. We have fire extinguishers. We have insurance in case, something happens to the truck, gets hit or stolen or whatever. You should always think about that. You've got to cover your liabilities. So one thing that we've recommended in the past, I think you should do if you haven't done, and probably should do, maybe twice a year, is your SWOT analysis, where you define your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats. We have a podcast on that, so you can watch that and learn more about that. I think we have a template on there, but also this section will include things like a contingency plan and then the legal considerations along with the insurance that we mentioned.
And, I'm going to get specific in this a little bit. If you're doing markets and you're out there in a tent and the wind comes, what happens? How are you covered? Or if you're making a product and you don't know this, but someone else has already made it and it's trademarked, or they've got, a patent on it, they're going to come after you. So you need to be thinking, how are you covered? And that's really what this section does, is it makes you think about the what if. Okay.
Right. You can't, some organizations won't allow you to bid or get a license to sell to them if you don't have liability insurance. I know the universities are like that, for example. I think we had to carry $2 or $3 million.
Well, and
of
some
liability
some
insurance.
companies that you work with, large companies, they are assuming you have insurance, but if they ask you and you don't, they may not work with you.
Well, it's usually part of the bid package up front, right?
Yeah,
To get
yeah.
approved.
Yep. And the last area in the template, and you can add more to your template, this is just a general skeleton, is the appendix. And this is kind of where you can put your backup information, like some photos of things you're working on, some branding material, customer reviews. It's great for presenting to corporate clients, and it's a way to document your journey. And as I was saying before, I've been asked a couple of times to present my business plan for certain things when I'm trying to get licensing with CLC, college licensing certification.com. They've asked for my business plan because they want to see that you got your act together. And I'm guessing if I went to go get some type of loan, they would probably ask for my business plan. Because I think
They would.
it's a pretty normal thing. So this is really getting your ducks in a row and getting aligned around that and making sure that you've got branding consistency and things that you would actually kind of show to a B2B client if you needed to go pitch to one, right? I mean, if you go to, let's hypothetical that. Let's say I want to go get business with Anheuser-Busch. I'm making it up. Let's say I get a seat at the table. I got to come in and they're going to go, who are you? A lot of these things I'm pulling from here and probably putting in a slide and saying, here's our overview. Here's what we do. Here's our target market. This is what sets us apart.
Well, the insurance for sure you're going to have.
Yeah. And then you can, but each of these sections we could even pull out and just walk through. Here's what my forecasted projections for sales are going to be this year. Here's what they were last year. Here's how we're structured. Here's how our equipment, our operations plan look like. So this document is the backbone of making you think about it and document what you're doing or what you want to do.
Yeah, we have been asked for our operations plan by some of these customers. They want to know, how do you scale up? What equipment do you have? I don't think we forward the whole thing, but we sent them sections of it, and we have a video of our shop.
They want to make sure that we're really making it and we're not getting someone from China making it.
Yeah, we have a couple customers that insist on everything being made in the US. So they've come out to our shop to see it.
Yeah.
And they validated our supply chain. As a matter of fact, when we worked for when we got the initial licensing for the universities, we had to list out our supply chain.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this document, I know some people are like, why do I want to go do that? It's also a compass for you because it makes you sometimes come back to it and say, well, we had this opportunity presented in front of us, but does it align with our business plan? You and I have done that a couple of times this year. It allows you to say, this is a good opportunity, or nope, this doesn't align. And it could really, and you may say, well, should we adjust our business plan to maybe do this? It just gives you that critical thinking that
do you want a brick and mortar store, or do you want to just sell online? I mean, you've got to make that decision. You want to do it in a very clear and comprehensive way. And you want to be focused, intentional, and driving profitability. If you don't do these things, then you're just leaving it up to chance. And there's a much higher probability, frankly, you're going to go out of business.
Yeah. And, if I relate it back to our corporate world days where you're still working, but, I was program manager. These are the basic things you would have, your program management plan, and you would have project plans, and these things are in there. They're just maybe worded a little differently, but it's the same thing because, you got to know what you're working on, what you're doing, and what gets measured gets done. So I guess in summary, James, what else do you want to say to close this up?
No, I mean, you hit it, plan your work your plan. You're absolutely right. You have to have a plan. It won't be right to begin with. I think that's important to say, but you update it. And then you get it where you're, it's 90+% correct. And then I would update it, and we need to update ours again, but I would probably update it once a quarter, because there have been several instances recently when you said, is that really our target audience? Is that our customer? And we won't go dive into the weeds now, but we went after one and we kind of, took the bait. And then at the end we said, nah, it's really not our customer. It won't even support our shop rate. It's a stretch to get there.
Yeah. And I will say this example in closing, but obviously as makers, we know our business and we're kind of making our thing. And our biggest thing is we're being creative, but James and I are starting another business entity. And the thing that we said, it's not maker related, it's something technical. And we were like, we need to write a business plan. That way we're focused and we know what we're doing and who our target people are. Because if we don't, then we're just making something without, being intentional about it. And so that's what got us like, well, we need to hone up our business plan for our maker side as well. And it's just something that's a good practice to do. I highly recommend it. There's free templates out there. We're going to provide one in the Laser Lounge Facebook group. And honestly, after I'm done with ours, I'm going to run it through ChatGPT and say, look at our business plan, see if you see any gaps, or there's some areas that we're missing, right? And we did that with our other plan, and it was actually pretty good feedback that we got from it.
That was insightful. And then if there's an interest, we'll share that as well.
Yeah. So we're going to write ours this week and kind of step through it with y'all in the next podcast to give you some insight to a real one. But anyway, thanks for listening today, guys. We hope that you have a great day in your day-to-day, your weekend, and a safe drive if you're driving home or driving to work. And you can catch us online. We have a YouTube, and we also have a link tree. YouTube is Pate Ranch, Laser Lounge at Pate Ranch. Facebook page, that's your form of social media. We've got a group of about 15,000 people in there, the Laser Lounge at Pate Ranch. Want to thank you to our sponsors today. OTN Lasers, and then also GS2 Awards, where you can get your laser supplies and equipment like Trotec lasers and Iconic sandblasting. We're getting a sandblasters coming in the next week or two.
Yeah, excited about that.
So thank you, sponsors, for that. We appreciate that, and we'll see you guys online.